Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, February 9th. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Joining with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Times columnist Mark Kiesling. Let's jump right in with candidate filings, which are actually go until Friday, so we're not sure everyone that's going to file, but we have a pretty good idea so far, Doug, and some interesting developments, particularly in the governor's race.
Right. We've got basically the race in the primary at this point that everybody expected it would be for November.
Mm-hmm.
John Gregg with no Democratic opposition, and Mike Pence with no Republican opposition. Now that's the surprise.
Yeah, Jim Wallace, a Republican, was unable to get on the ballot, basically.
Well, yeah, it's pretty tough to get on the ballot. You've got to show that you've got a lot of support. You have to get 500 signatures in every congressional district, and he fell short.
Mm-hmm.
So looks like he's not going to be on the ballot, but it sounds like he's got other aspirations for office. So
there's talk of him maybe running in the 5th district,
for Congress,
Dan Burton's district. Dan Burton retiring from Congress. The irony kind of there is that Mike Delph said he's not. There was speculation that he might run for the 5th district. He's not going to run for the 5th district.
And what was nice was the reasons that Mike Delph said that he would not run, and this is he's a social conservative.
State senator.
Exactly. And so I talked with him at length last fall, and the exact same reasons that he talked about then about not having congressional or other federal aspirations, we'll say, are the same reasons he cited. So he's sticking by his guns.
Right. Delph is a big backer of Rick Santorum.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how Santorum does in both Indiana and Illinois, given his recent victories.
Right.
Yeah. This week was a fascinating week for the Republican race, where you had Rick Santorum winning the 3 contests in Minnesota, Missouri, and Colorado.
And Minnesota, not known for being a conservative state.
Right. Well, and Minnesota and Colorado were states that I think Romney won 4 years ago, so it was quite a defeat for him, and it really kind of blows things wide open again.
Are people tired of Mitt Romney?
Well, I'm not sure if it's that so much that they really can't make up their minds what exactly they do want.
I think a lot of conservatives, whether it's social conservatives or others,
fiscal conservatives,
are a bit skeptical of Romney and his positions. They have shifted over the years.
In Massachusetts is
certainly
the big one, and that's against him.
So those lingering doubts still exist, and someone like Mike Delph falls into that social conservative category, and he's backing Santorum. So
now, compare that to what happened here with Mitch Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
He decided not to run this year, and I think it's been my position all along that he did not want to be tagged with a loser label, a guy who would gone to the well and come up dry. So he would rather have not gone to the well at all. In 2016, I think he'll be happy to go to the well. Romney has gone to the well before, come up dry, and maybe people are just looking for some better alternative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or maybe he needs a better bucket.
Right.
He needs a larger bucket.
Any other?
Maybe he needs the old Oaken bucket. That's it,
Exactly.
With our local races, anything else interesting?
Well, how about the Chet Dokas thing?
He still hasn't filed yet.
Filed.
As of last time we checked.
We know that Hank Adams, the Republican Lake County assessor, is not going to run for state.
And again, he said he was I think still on the fence a little bit last time I talked to him, and he made the point that the voters elected him to do this. He's in the midst of a lot of reforms, and in the assessor's office, and now how does he accomplish all of these changes by bailing out before he even finishes a single term.
So what you're saying, he's not being the Tom Philpott of there.
Exactly. Well, exactly.
Good way to look at it.
Well, now, so where do you see us leaving this race?
Well, he wasn't exactly leaving it. Oh, where do I see it leaving?
Where do you see
it
leaving? Where?
I think there are a couple of Republicans in there already. Pete Kerrigan's, for instance, one of them. Help me with the other one whose name escapes me.
The guy from Cherville?
Man from La Mancha? No, that was a different movie.
No.
Well, it's a seat, though, that the Republicans stand a pretty good chance of picking up.
Right.
Due to the way it's drawn.
Right. And
a lot of Cherville, St. John.
And the question was, who was going to be the Democrat? Was Chet Dobas going to say, I'm going to run there where I have a condo, or is he going to stay with his home in Maryville where he's lived for years?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see which option he exercises.
Yeah, we'll find out.
And if he does run in Maryville, then he's up against Vernon Smith, who's another incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
So that presents its own challenge.
Yeah.
And speaking of Cherville, how about the whole Jerry Shoup thing?
That's pretty interesting, I think. This we're talking about the trash to ethanol proposal, and specifically how Shoup was the biggest backer of that, and now on the Lake County Solid Waste Management District Board of Directors, if that's enough words for you.
It's better than little.
Basically, it's almost as if
exactly.
It's almost as if Shoup was deposed. I mean, he put forth his own candidate, and they rather solidly rejected it. So his leadership on that's been greatly smacked down, as it were, at a time when he's running for re-election as commissioner.
Well, so how is that going to affect the commissioner's race? Because he's running against Roy Dominguez, former sheriff.
And Dominguez is a critic of trash to ethanol.
Well, and popular in some quarters, but carrying some baggage in other quarters.
Well, they've got a matching set of luggage, I think. So
I think they do, and that's why it's so interesting.
Yeah, it will be. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
Yeah.
Do you have trouble at the airport picking up that luggage? It does look so much the same.
Speaking of travel, while we're on that topic, let's talk about the Illiana Expressway.
Very nice segue.
Very well done.
Which we saw this week was narrowed down to 4 prime routes that they're looking at. I guess they have one route,
the
that
B3 route,
the favored route, which would kind of run between Lowell and Cedar Lake, from connecting I-65 to I-55 in
go near
Illinois.
The Piatone Airport.
And obviously, the prospects, would be very good for development along that corridor. So it's a crucial question as to where this is going to be.
Well, there's a lot of economic development potential along that corridor, and you'll have new exits built. When you start doing that, you start getting development.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
Now, I know some of the people in Porter County, for example, have had some pretty serious reservations about that swinging through Porter County and up to connect to either the toll road or to.
Right, and that's not, at least not in our lifetime, probably going to happen.
Right. Currently, the
plan
plan
is
is
longer than that.
But the current proposal, all along, well, since that whole swing through till Michigan City route got shut down,
that
we're
did not
talking
fly
strictly
well.
between I-65 and I-55, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Which is a great economic development engine, and I just don't, it has always failed to amaze me, or never ceased to amaze me, I guess I should say, that the people in Porter County, considering the small swath that will really cut through the county, don't recognize the economic potential for that type of
Well, I think what happened in Porter County was,
They didn't
was
want
a couple of factors.
I-65 either back in 1950,
Yeah,
whatever
exactly.
it was.
Well,
so-
I mean, in Porter County, you have to realize that they lost a good chunk of land to Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore. And so, that's land that is not taxed right now because it's federal property. And so, the county has lost that income. And then here came this idea of an Illiana Expressway that would come through, take a wide swath through there. And they used a marker that was really wide to draw the, kind of proposed maybe tentative route. And, everybody looked at this fat marker.
Yeah, well,
and
wasn't that
said,
fat
Should've used a
marker?
Sharpie.
"Here's my house." Exactly.
But wasn't
So-
that fat marker a bit misleading?
Well, absolutely, but and it's it's hard to convince people that they're going to take as few properties as possible, as few buildings as possible. Especially, if you're talking about is this going to wipe out my house? Well, the route that they prefer now for the Illiana, I think knocks out something like 67 buildings. So it's a fair number, but you put it up farther north, it's going to take out a whole lot more.
Well, yeah,
So
60,
that's
I
why they
mean,
moved
really,
us
when you
out.
consider it, 67 buildings, when you're going from I-55, or at least
Right.
from, to I-65, is minimal. And it's not like the people will not be compensated for
They'll
that.
be well compensated.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. It's not-
Now, this is not in any way to say that they will not be inconvenienced, because, certainly anytime you lose a home for a highway that your children grew up in, maybe your grandchildren came to visit
Well, I
you
understand.
every year,
I-
you marked their heights.
Sure,
you
but
know.
I understand that. But let's look back to 1956, when President Eisenhower signed the Interstate Highway Bill into law. I mean, that whole interstate highway system did that.
Yeah, it did that, but World War II was a lot closer in people's, they were thinking of that, and how, Eisenhower's big pitch for the interstate system was, let's think about, what the German interstate highway system.
The Autobahn.
The Autobahn, yeah, and how that was able to facilitate moving of troops and supplies for the troops, and also, in an emergency, you can land aircraft on the darn thing. It's so wide, and clear. So that was a huge selling point for the birth of the interstate highway system.
You don't want to
Now
land
that's a long way.
But you don't want to land an airplane on the Autobahn when you get a Mercedes doing 200 miles an hour behind you.
Well, if you landed on two of them, you could probably
You
match up the speeds. But
Yeah.
it's there if you need it.
Yeah, let's shift gears and talk about an interesting story.
Another nice
that
segue, by the way.
interesting story that developed this week. We see East Chicago has a new police chief. It's a familiar face, isn't it?
It is a
Mark?
familiar face. It's Mark Becker, a former FBI agent, which I think is very significant, and former chief of police in Portage. Mark had been an FBI agent for many years.
Sure.
Very well respected in the area.
Right.
And I mean, probably between him and Chuck Orlecki, the two of the most respected FBI agents that we had in this area. And I think Mayor Copeland in East Chicago has, I think this is a signal that says, hey, look, this is not business as usual anymore. We're not, and I'm not putting down Gus Flores or any of the other former chiefs of police, but they came from within the system. They rose up through the ranks of the East Chicago Police Department. Copeland has signaled by this appointment that he wants someone from outside the department to come in, someone with a proven clean record, to make whatever changes are necessary to make that department a respectable, viable department.
It's interesting. He's being brought in as an independent contractor. He's basically being given
Right.
kind of like a one-year contract. So
It's not that unusual because there's a whole thing when you name someone chief. There's two ways you can do it, and one of them is the independent contractor route, and the other one is like, let's take Hammond for example, where former Mayor Didolo took Jim Bobowski and made him chief. Jim was a corporal, and he just promoted him to chief. A chief is not a rank. Chief is a title. So he was still a corporal, but he was chief. So he was paid as though he was a chief, but he was still a sworn officer within that police department. Becker will not have that. He is more comparable to someone, say, like Joe Guzik in St. John, who was brought on not as a sworn officer of the department, but as an independent contractor who was made chief. But the danger of that, to Mark Becker and to Joe Guzik, as he found out, is that you serve at the pleasure of your superior, and if you're gone, now see when Bobowski when his chief status was removed, went back to being a corporal. He remained in the department. He kept his pension. Everything remained somewhat the same for him, except for the fact that he wasn't chief anymore. Well, if Becker, like Guzik, if they decide that they don't want him, he's just gone.
Well, he's already been down this road in Portage.
Exactly.
So I think he kind of knows the game going in. So.
Well, he's a retired FBI agent, so I don't think we're going to be having a tag day for him anytime soon. But
I think the selling point for
Mark's a good guy,
Becker coming in, I think the selling point for him is that East Chicago has started bringing in federal agents and said welcome, we want you to help clean up our streets, and so bringing Becker in as somebody who obviously knows how the feds work, and so he's able to accomplish that, and hopefully that will help with the clean up the streets process that Copeland is attempting to do.
Why I think it's another indication that Anthony Copeland is serious about reforming the way things are done in East Chicago.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Says a lot about the city and how much it's changed.
Yeah, when you start naming department heads, it tells you a lot about who's naming them.
Right.
Not just about the department heads themselves.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, that's all the time we have this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with another Political Roundtable.